righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are.
Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
So teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way. When I cannot stand, I'll fall on you.
Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour. Lord, I need you so. You are my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
My one defense, righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Good evening, and welcome to the Stillwater First United Methodist Church. My name is Pastor Kyle, and whether you're here with us in this worship space or you're joining us with us via the YouTube live stream, know that it is an honor to be worshiping with you on this Good Friday. We gather together on this Good Friday. We have our Paschal candle lit, which reminds us of the light and the love of Christ. And we gather together tonight to remember that light of the world gave his life so that we might truly live. I want to let you know we are going to have a part later in our service where you will be invited to participate by writing something down on a slip of paper if you choose to do so. So for those of you who are worshiping with us here, if I missed anyone, we do have slips of paper and pens in the back. You're welcome to grab one during our opening song. For those of you worshiping from home, I invite you to get a piece of notebook paper, a pencil, a pen, something that you can write on should you desire to do so later in our service. I also want to go ahead and forewarn you now that our service will end in silence. And so as we come to the conclusion of our service, there will not be a formal dismissal. You will see Pastor Cindy and I exit from the room, and at which point you will be free to remain and spend time in prayer for as long as you desire, or to get up and to leave in silence once you are ready to do so. And now I invite you to enter into an attitude of remembrance, thanksgiving, and worship.
When I survey the wondrous cross on which I am the cross, fully dressed and ready to serve, holding tightly in anticipation. Standing seems such a simple task, considering past experience. Surely I can hold on for such a short while, but this time is different. The moments spent holding up and carrying this one seem much longer. Hope that this would soon be over is giving way to hopelessness. My stamina drips down with every drop from his crown, down and through to the ground that temporarily roots me. I inherit this deep connection born in pain like I have never known before. I am beginning to question why I am strengthened for this purpose of holding up for display what was intended to shame, holding up the weight of this world. This is not what I signed up for. I am the cross, fully dressed and ready to serve, holding tightly in anticipation. The moment has nearly come. I am thirsty. I am thirsty? No. Haven't you been through enough? Why must I, no, we, hold on for so long? Why extend your suffering for even a fraction of a moment longer? What are you trying to prove? Oh, it is finished. Oh, I see. I feel it. What divine mystery this is to me, to in one moment feel the fullness of the burdens you carried, then to see that it was not your body that made holding you in place so difficult, but your spirit, that sustaining spirit, that loving and never failing part of you, that even to the last painful and unbearable breath would not give up on the world. The display, the words, all were a purpose. I am the cross. How selfish of me to want you back. Even I, who made such suffering a reality, who caused so much hurt, who put my purpose, my perspective, my job before your divine and unmatched purpose and light. Yes, I see, I feel it. I am the cross, fully dressed and ready to serve my purpose, holding on to the rags, the dressing that once was filled with the spirit of love we all need. I am the cross, sitting in confusion, wishing I had no part in this, yet I am thankful to have known this love. People see me, see what I held up, and are moved to tears. If only they could move beyond the flesh and recognize that the scriptures have been fulfilled. I am the cross, fully dressed, and having served, regret my anticipation and wish another way, a less painful way, could have served God's purpose.
Love so amazing, so dear.
Picture this: a secluded valley deep in darkness, soft whispers and breath held. Then suddenly light pierces the dark as a friend, turned betrayer for a bag of silver, brings guards. And all Jesus says is, "Whom do you seek?" There is conversation back and forth, brief yet deep. Tensions are high. An ear is cut off and returned to keep. But the bottom line is, they found the man they want, the I Am, the Christ, the life-giving fount. Picture this. Two scenes are woven together. The priest, Annas, sits on high, while Peter forgets his oath to never deny. The one whom he follows just after the arrest, he watches from afar in deep distress. Not one, not two, but 3 times he lies. A rooster cries. Everything in Peter slowly dies. Picture this. Move on to interrogation number 2. Pilate asks the questions as the crowd anticipates if he will follow through. "Take him yourselves," he tells the crowd. But the washing of his hands cannot overpower the sound washing over him from the crowd. Pilate seems conflicted and confused. What has this man done to be so abused? The crowd grows more violent and loud. "You know I can save you, right? Work with me here, we'll figure it out." Jesus will have none of that, because he came to bear witness and followed this purpose, this route. Listen to this. "Crucify him, crucify him!" Endless mocks and shouts. The fury of the crowd drowns everything else out. "A king? Please!" As they press a thorn-made crown on his head, adorning with a robe, whipped, slapped, and beaten. "Greet the King of the Jews," they said. Follow this. The crowd files out of the city to Golgotha, the skull. Everyone is there, those who love him, those who hate him, those who fear him and all. An exchange takes place, mother to newly appointed son. The sun rises high in the sky as criminals are raised, one by one. Feel this. A scratchy throat, a body pierced wide, with only sour wine from a sponge to drink, blood and water flowing from his side, shallow breaths, watchful eyes. "It is finished," Christ said, head lifted to the skies.
It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, while the sun's light failed and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly this man was innocent." And when all the crowds who had gathered there before this spectacle saw what had taken place, they returned home, beating their breasts. But all his acquaintances, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood off at a distance, watching these things. If you've worshiped with us throughout the season of Lent, you know that in our worship services the past 6 weeks, have been sharing a sermon series called Follow Me, in which we've been talking about those stories where Jesus calls others to come and follow him. We've investigated scriptures where individuals have proclaimed their desire to follow Jesus. We've looked at places where Jesus talks about what it means to truly be his follower. And if you're with us last Sunday, I told you that was the last sermon in the series. And it was, but we'll call tonight an epilogue. Because I can't help but continue to think about that idea of following Jesus when I read this scripture, and especially when I hear in the Gospel of Luke that final statement that Jesus' acquaintances, the people he knew, his disciples, his friends, even many of the women who had followed him all the way from Galilee, that they watched all these things from afar. And I find myself wondering, why are they so far away? Why in the Gospel of Luke, as he tells this story, does Jesus only have for company at the cross religious leaders who want him dead, Roman soldiers who drove in the nails, and criminals, one on his right and one on his left? I mean, even if his followers, his disciples, his friends, even if they couldn't do anything, they at least could have offered some sort of comfort just being there present with him, letting him know that in his final moments he was not alone. Why couldn't they follow just a little bit closer? And then, of course, we heard the story, and we probably know why, don't we? I mean, Judas was one of Jesus' disciples, and yet he definitely didn't follow very closely, did he? For 30 pieces of silver, he betrays Jesus, hands him over. And I know for you and for me, it's probably easy to think, well, I would never do such a thing, but doesn't greed seep into our lives from time to time? And in fact, wouldn't life be financially beneficial if we did hold Jesus a little bit more at arm's length away, if we followed a little less closely? I mean, think about it. Not only would you not have to worry about, giving to the church and supporting God's kingdom work and all those types of things, but also in your personal life, in your business, and if you have employees, or if you have people who are customers who buy things from you, maybe in your dealings with others, if you didn't worry about Christ, if you didn't worry about his teachings, if you didn't have to worry about caring about other people, couldn't you just focus upon your own bottom line and what financially benefits you? And holding Christ at the distance really does allow for greed to seep in so much easier. By the time the rooster crowed, Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. And this wasn't like he denied him once and then a few weeks or months later he denied him again. No, it was 3 times in rapid succession on the same night in the same location. As people stop and ask him, now wait a minute, we've seen you with this Jesus, right? You're one of them. You're a Galilean. Each time Peter says, no, woman, I am not one of his followers. Man, I do not know what you're talking about. People, I don't understand you. I am not one of his followers. Why deny it? Could it be fear? Fear that maybe the same thing might happen to him, that he might experience persecution, that others might turn against him if they knew he was a follower of Jesus. It's so much easier and safer if you just follow a little bit further away so you don't have as much to be afraid of. And Pilate, he never, said that he was a follower of Jesus. He never claimed to desire to follow Jesus. He wanted nothing to do with it, and yet he's brought into the situation, isn't he? He's brought into it, and he's forced to make a decision. The religious leaders want him to hand Jesus over to be crucified, to give him this death sentence. And what does Pilate say? I wash my hands of it. I want nothing to do with this. I don't want to get my hands dirty. Leave me out of this. I know we don't want to, but can you relate to Pilate? Is there any place in your life where you feel that, I see something happening in the life of my family or in my neighbor or in a coworker, and yes, maybe I could help in some way, maybe I could address it, but I'd really rather stay out of it and not get my hands dirty. And what does Jesus tell us to do? Come, follow me. Love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And yet, I don't know about you, but for me, it just seems so much easier. God, I really like this me and God thing, this me and Jesus thing, but this, loving and caring about my neighbors, that gets messy. It's just so much easier if I could keep it all at a distance and keep my hands clean. And then Jesus, he has a crown of thorns that's placed upon his head, and you know why it's there, don't you? Yes, to cause some physical pain, but they're mocking him. A crown of thorns, and then a purple robe is draped over him, and the soldiers, they mock him as they bow down. Hail, Jesus, King of the Jews! Hail, Lord Jesus! Now we're fortunate. We're fortunate that we can gather together freely, and we can worship God without fear of what might happen or someone catching us as we walk out these doors. But aren't there some circles? Aren't there some places in your life, maybe work, maybe in your family, maybe in the communities that you're a part of, where, being a follower of Jesus really makes you the butt of the joke, where you'll be mocked for faithfulness? Aren't those places where it is just a little bit easier if you just don't tell people what you do on Sunday mornings? If you just don't talk about what Jesus means to you, maybe if you just hold Jesus a little further away, you don't have to worry about those who might laugh at you, mock you, or talk about you behind your back. I can understand why the disciples and the followers, the women, the acquaintances of Jesus, I can understand why they didn't want to be there at the cross, because it had to be horrible. To see the nails driven into his hands, to hear his labored breaths, to hear him cry out, "I'm thirsty." It's hard to be in the presence of suffering and pain and sorrow and loneliness. It's just so much easier if we keep it all at an arm's length, if we just watch and observe from a distance where we don't have to get too close. You've experienced that, haven't you? A friend, a family member, a fellow church member who looks to you and looks to others and is so tired and alone and suffering. And they look at you and they just want some comfort, and they just want to know that they're not alone, and yet you feel uncomfortable because you don't know what to say. You don't know what to do. You let someone else help. That's not me. I can't do that. And so you just avoid it, stay away. As I stand here tonight and I ask this question, I wonder why the disciples, the acquaintances, the women, the followers, all these people who you'd expect to be there at the cross, I wonder why they're following from a distance, why they're so far away. And the answer is pretty plain. Excuse after excuse, reason after reason, fear, anxieties, doubts, uncertainties, personal greed and selfishness, a desire not to be mocked or persecuted ourselves. We have so many reasons that the disciples and the followers and everyone else said, I don't want to be there at the cross. I don't want to get too close. And excuse after excuse, reason after reason, fear after fear, and anxiety builds a wall, a barrier between them and the cross, keeping them from getting too close. And then it forces me to stop and think about myself. What about me? I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm one of his disciples. But just how close am I willing to get? How close am I willing to follow? What fears, anxieties, uncertainties, personal selfishness, what do I have that builds the wall brick by brick, creates a barrier between me and following Christ too closely? What about you? What brick can maybe you add to this wall? Which one of these experiences triggers for you your own fears, your doubts and anxieties that makes you take just a step or two back further and further from Jesus? And yet here we are on Good Friday, when we pause and we stop and we acknowledge what Jesus gave and we acknowledge the life that he gave. And I have to think to myself, is being a follower of Jesus Christ from a distance where it's safe, where my hands can stay clean, where no one will judge me for being his disciple, is that the kind of discipleship that Jesus deserves? A people who watch and follow from a distance? Or does he deserve something more? Does he deserve something more faithful? Has he earned from us a people whose lives seek to be in lockstep and follow closely behind, aligning our path with his? You know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid that each of us, there's times in our lives, maybe even now, for our own safety and security and comfort, we're following so far behind that the light of Christ is no longer shining upon us. Not because it's no longer there, but because we're so many steps behind, we can no longer feel its warmth. But of course, the good news is those disciples, those followers, those acquaintances of Jesus, though they're far off in the distance, Jesus still gives his life for them. He doesn't get down. He doesn't say, I'm done. This isn't worth it. He says, no. Even though you aren't ready to be here at my side, my love, my forgiveness, my grace for you is strong enough that even if you're not here, I'm still willing to die for you. And I take comfort in that message because that's the truth for me, and that's the truth for you. And so we celebrate that good news tonight, that no matter how far we fall behind, Jesus' love and grace, his sacrifice is still made for you. Not because you earned it, but because you are God's beloved child. But we also have a chance to respond. So here in a moment, we're going to enter into a time of prayer. And you should have a slip of paper and a pen with you. For those of you worshiping remotely, if you have a pencil, pen, a piece of paper, pen, or something with you, now would be the time to get it. And I want you to stop, and I want you to pray. I want you to think about, what is one of your fears, one of your anxieties? What is one of those pieces of brick that's building a wall, creating a barrier between you and Christ? What is making you follow from a distance at this time in your life? And I want you to pray and consider, is this something that I'm willing to tear down? Is this a fear and anxiety that I'm willing to crucify and bury with Christ? Christ who gave his life for me. And I want you to write it down on that slip of paper. For those of you worshiping remotely, I'd invite you to then take that piece of paper and crumple it, fold it up, throw it in a trash can, place it somewhere that can symbolize for you that you are burying it, you are leaving it behind. For those of you here in this worship space, the light will come up over here to my left, to your right here in just a moment, and we have our own little mini tomb, if you will. And if you're comfortable, I invite you to take that piece of paper. No one else is going to read it or look at it. But I invite you to take that piece of paper, and after you're finished praying, I invite you to come up and to place it into our little tomb here. And once we are done, we're going to place the rocks, the stones over it. And we're going to allow that fear and that anxiety to be buried forever. Unlike Christ, it will not rise again. Let us now go to God in prayer as we give thanks to the Lord the light who gave his life for you and for me.
Picture this. The crowds file out. It seems no one is left there. His body is taken to a tomb where he is placed alone with extreme care.